We're live.
One big clap.
Go ahead.
All right, ready to do this, guys? Welcome to the ArcFluence podcast, where we talk about how design impacts the way we live, work, and invest. I'm Nick Karakan, your host, and with me are my two amazing co-hosts, business partners, and lifelong friends, Paul Fatkins and Nino Samrajic. Today we have an amazing guest. Danny, what episode is this?
16.
Episode 16 coming at ya, and we have Tabi Mund with us, who is an amazing interior designer. Tabi, say hi.
Hello. Thanks for having me out. I'm going to be really awkward, so it's
No.
gonna be okay.
No,
It's
you're
going to be all right.
fine.
Tabi-
It's gonna be good.
Fine.
Tabi has been working.
By the way, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
It's-
you. I know we've
I know.
communicated
I
via
know.
email. It's always
I
like
know.
a fun,
Yeah.
you know.
Just like, oh, who's this person?
Who is
Hey,
exactly?
Tabi, how's it going?
Exactly.
Yeah, so-
I'm excited about this project.
First time
we're
in
doing
person.
together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy for that.
Same. Because I think it could be like more of it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've
That's
done a
the
lot of
goal,
site
right?
visits together, so I think we've done, about 4 projects together or something like that?
Well, Nick is always scheming on whatever. He has this idea, that idea, this idea.
Isn't it great?
It is. Sometimes overwhelming.
You have to reel me in.
Yeah. So all of a sudden he's just like,
okay.
oh, we're going to reach out to Tabi. And I'm like, who's Tabi?
Yeah.
So, yeah, how did you meet? What's this backstory with you guys?
That's a great question. So
Do you remember? What's your version? Because I
My
wonder if it's the
version-
same.
this is so
Let's
funny.
listen to the version.
My version is you were from the Cincinnati area. No? So,
No? Keep
going.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Or Kentucky?
You're very close.
Okay. And my wife found her. She owns Swoon Rugs, and my wife loved her personality, her taste, her posts on
that's
Instagram.
nice.
And she's like, Nick, you got to follow this person. And then we bought a rug from you, and then you said you're moving here, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. And then you started growing your business, and things
Yeah.
started changing, and we bought more rugs from you, and then we started designing with you.
Yes.
Okay.
But yeah, that's it. I mean, I think that's the right version. I think I lived in Eastern Kentucky, and everyone, I used to do, I used to work for an online decorating company out of New York. It was a startup when I got involved, and I would call people from all over the country, and I'd be like, I'm in Kentucky, and they'd be like, Louisville, or like Lexington. I'm like, no, a hillside,
Don't
near
you-
West Virginia.
Don't
you
you,
know?
don't you pronounce it like Louisville?
Louisville.
Yeah.
Louisville, yeah.
Oh.
But everyone could. They're like, what? Obviously, you're in a metropolitan area. It's like, no, I'm in the middle of nowhere.
Kentucky's beautiful. It's a beautiful state.
It is.
Yeah, I go to
a
Bourbon
complicated
Trail
place, but yeah.
every year.
I do love Kentucky. Yeah, no, it's all good. I think that's the story. They have,
That's awesome. So
Goodness.
what ended up bringing you to Columbus, or at least you're in the
Yeah.
outskirts?
totally.
You still like your privacy.
Yeah. I am in the outside. I know. I still like the country a little bit, like that. Yeah, that's sort of my speed, I guess.
Yeah.
After living in a couple different places prior. So we moved there for my husband's work. He's a firefighter, so he.
Oh wow.
Columbus Columbus has awesome.
They do. They really do.
Fire program, fire department. Yeah, so it was a big goal to get here, and then we got here, and we were like, let's make the most of it. So
I love that.
Cool.
Why don't we talk about Swoon Studio or Swoon
Yeah.
Homes?
yes. Okay, so what do you want to know about it? I mean, I've been doing it exclusively. So I got my LLC a couple of years ago, but I started working in this field sort of slowly over the last probably 5 years, or in this vein of work.
So this is from my perspective.
This is so fun.
You know our house on Beach Street.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's great.
And basically, we decided to move in there, at least for the short term, for the moment now. And with all the other stuff that we had going on with Sarah's business, with Thanks for Visiting, and with, ArcFluence exploding, we're like, oh, we can't, these flips, all these things are becoming a lot of work, and we need to start building a team. So we're trying to reach out and grasp for amazing, talented people, and we're like, can you help us design our own home, like this small?
Like, yes.
Yeah, and
can.
it was spectacular. I was hoping for just like some really good ideas, because traditionally we would come up with, originally I'm from the New York City market, where I did a lot of interior design for luxury apartments, and Sarah and I did it together, and we had a lot of fun doing it. There was a market for it there. When we came to Columbus about 8 years ago, we were kind of reinventing ourselves, and we wanted to obviously invest and get into real estate, but we're like, how can we create some cash flow, to help also eat? And we found very quickly that the interior design market wasn't, certainly not as prolific that it is now, and people just didn't want to necessarily pay, and finding those clients and being new to the city was very difficult for us. This has all changed. Columbus is now a big city. It's a completely different.
Isn't it crazy?
Oh my goodness, it's almost doubled in size since we've been here, and
well, even less. Monday this past week they passed the zoning. The new zoning resolution has passed.
All new zoning.
Yeah.
And like we're gonna see some major changes with that, and Intel and all this other stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden there's a huge market for interior design.
Yeah,
And
it seems
people
like
are-
that. Well, there's a housing shortage. I mean, it's like a complicated issue, right? Like the city is only X big, and the population is growing despite that fact.
Yeah.
And then the types of homes that people are building and the location that they're building them in doesn't suit everybody. And
Right.
so if you want to be in a neighborhood, you have to renovate to stay in that hood. And I think that that's a complicated thing about Columbus in general is like how the different areas operate. Even within the city, like even within the tax structure, like the townships and the ways that those communities are
And there's
structured.
there's commissions and historical districts and rules and and also the challenges of just finding the right team and construction people and everything else.
100%.
Yeah.
So it's not going to slow down. And I think that that's sort of a fun and exciting place to be. And I think also if you're interested in doing lots of different, like I think there's different designers who want to work in specific veins of work, which is awesome. Like I love, I don't happen to be one. I like to do lots of different things. So I think that that's another reason.
Yeah, we're talking about some commercial projects now, but obviously we've focused in the residential side.
Yep.
So walk me through it. Like, how many homes are you designing now? Is this 100% your full focus?
I'm also curious too, like your process, right?
Yeah.
Because obviously, it's like as an architecture firm, we have a certain process that we go through, certain steps we follow usually as we start a project and get to the point where we wrap it up. Mm-hmm. And then obviously, there's a lot we don't do, which is why we partner with people like yourself. So it's like, I'm just curious, a little bit of your process as well. So not only like walking through it,
and
like
how
Nick said.
you actually documenting your design.
Yep.
That's another thing.
Deliverables are key.
Exactly.
Like it's like buy the ideas in my head and
and
forget about it.
And how you actually do you have use any software or anything for visualizations that you can actually show the client? Tell us a little bit more about this stuff.
Yeah. So I'm a really good obsessive, and I feel like I'm in a room with some obsessives, right? Like
Yes.
we're good at doing that, right? Yeah. So it's good.
Detail oriented.
Yeah, and process is key, right? Like if you're talking about abstract things and things that also cost a lot of money, like it's sort of a complicated thing to figure out. So the last 3 years, that's become a little bit of my obsession is process. So deliverables are super important. It's all about creating a visual dialogue with somebody. So, and also I think I like to. The architecture thing is interesting because I always wanted to be an architect once I got further in school. And so also realizing that I'm not an architect, but there are things that have to do with flow and how space works that I'm really interested in, but also partnering with people who excel at the things that you can't do, I think are really critical for super successful results. So I love starting with what you guys have done and then moving on from there. But it's about first creating a visual dialogue. So like, someone will say modern. That means like 1,000 things to different people.
Yeah.
It means mid-century modern. It means contemporary and clean. It can be like something that someone saw in Europe. It's like there's like so many reference points for these different words. So I try really hard not to stick with the words because I don't know what their background with those words are. Yeah. So like you create this visual dialogue and then you figure out how it works. So if I'm brought into the project without an architect, I'll do a space planning sort of situation for like a kitchen and we'll do the flow because it has to work. Number one, and I use SketchUp because it's pretty affordable. And I can take up my line. I do line drawings in SketchUp, and then I can take those walls up. And then I do 3D visualizations, and that's when we start working into materials and then budget. So you're solving for what it looks like, how it works, and what it costs. And that area that you're trying to get to is where those three things cross. You know what I mean? Because it has to fit the budget, it has to function, and it has to be what they want it to look like. So that's...
I remember when, we were limited on because we can go down a rabbit hole and provide. We're working on an almost 7,000 square foot custom home together that is going to be extraordinary.
So sick.
Yeah, extraordinary. And but the price tag on that just for the interior design services is hefty. But the things that we're doing.
But is it?
No,
Is it?
you're
But
right.
is it?
But what we've seen,
The time you put relative to the
becoming
time
the
you
norm.
put in.
Exactly.
I guess from my perspective, we would give like, what what are those sheets that like a vision, not a vision board, but
like a mood board
Yeah,
or like
mood board.
a yeah.
Mood board. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and we would start with that, and that could be something that we could knock out in a couple hours.
Yeah.
It would be something easy and appropriate, and that was kind of the expectation a decade ago.
Right.
Now we're taking clients shopping. We're going out and touching and picking out the light fixtures together. We're ordering these finishes
Oh, it's so
together.
much detail.
We're coordinating the detail. We're making sure they're brought inside and protected in the garage so they're not taken. We are then coordinating with the contractor, and they're using the Gantt charts and working with their schedules and making sure things are arriving not too early, not too late, and that that's all kind of lined up. So we're
But
part.
that's actually design built.
Yeah.
man,
So
to the
we
full
become
extent.
Yes.
exactly. So we have
Yeah.
like a partnership with the contractor, and we're filling in a lot of these gaps, and it's really becoming a full service.
So you're actually in charge of you doing like a ordering of the materials and delivery and all this stuff.
It depends on what people are looking for. So I think
Okay.
it's like every project is different, but in this project, definitely being as useful as it possibly can, because for a variety of reasons. I think that this project is unique in a number of different ways.
Correct.
And so our roles have shifted to sort of suit that need of the specific scope. And this project we will probably help with definitely ordering, lighting, labeling. I mean, and it's how many sconces? I mean, it's...
Hundreds.
Yeah, the wall sconces are out of control
like-
on this project.
Yeah.
I love
couple
sconces.
hundred.
Yeah.
I love
Couple hundred.
sconces.
I know,
But
but at a certain point, we were walking through, and it's just like, and another one here, and another one here, and it's like, okay, what number are we at?
it's going to look so great. I mean, layers of light. It's going to.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
a home they're going to live in for generations, and I think that's
The-
something that's
The property's stunning, and yeah.
that's the goal at least. You know what I mean? Not that they necessarily will, but I think the hope is that they'll be here for a long, long time, and their kids will be here, and that or. I guess I don't know how that would work with twins, but someone will live there.
Yeah.
Maybe they fight for it. Like there's some sort of like battle. I don't know how that works out. It's not for us to decide.
Well, in this particular project, we did the floor plans. We are engaging Tabi with interior design. We are doing the landscape architecture. This is really a passion project at this point, and we're really excited at how it turns out.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So excited.
Our deadline is so we're in August now.
Yeah.
And I think this recording is probably going to be in September, but we're really trying to finish up by January? Originally it was December. Now we're pushing back to January.
I think that there's going to be phases of finish, but I think that they could potentially move in before, like, if they want to live through like trim carpentry, wrap up, and those sort of details, which they'll have to decide. But I think definitely spring they'll be fully moved in, and I think everyone will be done with their part. Like Fred will be done with landscape by then.
Yeah. So let's talk about those meetings, that shopping experience. What are some of the challenges you come into when you're working with clients, and what are some of the joys that you really have? That because I mean I've been geeking out with you a lot on certain elements. We're trying to make a decision. We're like, well, we got to get both the client, the couple on the same page, because sometimes one person has an opinion and
Always.
sometimes they have
Every couple.
And then we obviously have our own opinions, and we're strong opinionated about that. So it's been a dance.
It is. And as always, I love that. Like, I think that's so my dad's a shrink, and I think this is a weird thing about like growing up with a shrink is like we talked about why people do stuff like you would talk about the weather. Like it was just like an everyday kind of like, why is someone doing that? Well, this is, I mean, maybe it's not that, consistent or constant, but we talked about it a lot. So I love people, and I love thinking about why they do things, and I love like connecting, and it's actually a really intimate process because you're helping them decide like a lot of financial decisions, and then a lot of like personal things, and then also like if you're working with a couple, which often I end up working with couples, you're helping them decide something where they can both feel like they're part of the decision. And like that's a hard thing to do, and like and I think a lot of designers find that part. Well, okay, I shouldn't project onto all designers, but I think sometimes I hear from designers, it's like, they didn't like what I liked, you know what I mean? And it's like, well, duh, like that's not your job. Your job is not to tell people what they like. Your job is to help people make decisions and like meet their goals.
Right. You almost have to take your personal preference out of the equation. What we can push into the conversation is, we do 100 plus houses a year, right? Paul and I can design a kitchen or a house in our sleep.
Bananas.
Yeah. And we can be like, hey, we have a design review with all of our clients. So we go, hey, we asked how they're going to function with their family, how they're going to live together, what they prefer too, because based on there's cultural references sometimes that we have to deal with. And we're like, okay, well, we need to have an extra dishwasher or do this or do that, and make this work for their family. And we'll have we'll have the discussion, say, hey, this is what we've done this before. This is what we're seeing over and over again. Would you consider this?
Yep.
But then
Totally.
let's also bring it back to you, and how is it going to be relevant to you and your family?
I always like it when you get to that sticking point, Nick. You're always like, listen, I want to challenge you here.
Yeah,
so
I know.
that's like your favorite phrase to use. But I think it's sometimes important. Like you said, it's kind of a lot of listening, taking things in, and you're kind of setting your own personal preference aside. So I agree with what you're saying, and yeah, I think you're right. It's like you push them and say, listen, all my experience, we've always done this. What are your thoughts on it?
Yes.
And then you listen to the feedback, go from there.
Sometimes you have to save client from themselves because they have some goals and they think that's the right way to go, and
100%.
You have to just tell them like, hey, or it's gonna cost too much, or it's gonna be overly complicated, and can be simpler.
You can do anything you want if you have enough money.
Question I have for you is, this is one that sticks with all designers. It's that holy trinity. It's time, scope, and budget.
Yep.
And we have a tendency to overinvest ourselves in a project and crushing the boundary of something. It's usually time and budget that kill us on the end. How are you trying to find the balance in these two, or you haven't found it yet?
Great question.
Yeah, I think that I usually with my scope have a time limit in there. So it's like, we're going to make X number of decisions in X amount of time.
Yeah.
And I feel like that puts sort of the pressure on everybody. You know what I mean? Like, if these decisions aren't made in this specific time window, which is usually pretty broad. Like, I'm not like, you have to figure this out in 2 weeks. It's like, it's usually months of time. And I think that helps, keep everybody in sort of a fair,
It's not, you said it very eloquently, that it's easier said than done because they have jobs and they have challenges and they have kids and they have, everything kind of piles up.
And I'm guessing you don't have only one client you're working, you have multiple clients that you're trying to juggle in. So you have to dedicate your time to other people. You cannot overinvest to someone, just one.
Exactly. I'm on medicated ADHD. So, I was medicated as a kid for a long time. And then as an adult, I was like, no, thank you. But I use stress to help me focus.
I think when my my back is against the wall, I perform better.
Much better.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a balance, and it's figuring out the right amount of stress. But I really like being set in like a pressure cooker. I also heard this thing one time. Like, I read this book called Art and Fear like a while ago, and it talks. There's a story. It's probably not just in this book, but I read it in the book where this pottery teacher would take the students and divide them in two, and he would take half the class and say, your only goal this semester is to create one piece of beautiful pottery, and that's what you'll be graded on. And then the other group of the class was to make the most pieces that they could make, and that was their grade. And so when they finished, the pieces that were the most beautiful were the ones where they had experimented the most and created and had the most mistakes and learned from those mistakes and sort of. So I think that I'm so excited to be in this like moment of doing the work that I'm really interested in with people that are really lovely. So I'm like very much trying to work through that part of it. Like, how much can I learn? How quickly can I learn it? What can I get through?
Oh, a similar thing happened in our house where we're like, we wanted to buy we did buy these antique dressers to put in all of our bathrooms as the vanities. And I'm like, okay, how are we going to make this work? And we had to get tops for some of these. So I'm like,
beautiful tops. It turned out beautifully.
Tabby took us to the manufacturer. We picked out some marble. Now we're going up the wall with the marble. Now we're getting real shapes with the marble. I'm like, oh, this is getting expensive. But you
made it with your eyes open. You made the decision with your eyes open.
Absolutely.
In like a slowed process way.
But when it got installed, I was like, holy cow, nobody has a bathroom like this. This is great. It was a lot of fun. The process was fun too, and I kind of enjoyed the journey. Everyone really tries to stick to the goal of something, or like the end point where I want to get this thing at the end. But like what we've learned by doing this multiple times, we're discovering like, hey, like we can create better things if we take some risks. And I think that was what you're trying to say there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I'm just having a lot of fun. Like, and that's a good place to be.
You've been in this business, you mentioned, over 5 years?
Yeah, that's sort of. So I went to school. I have a BA in interior design, and I graduated in 2000. Well, first I was an English major, and I was going to be a poet. And then I was like, that's not real. Or right? But you're like 18. Everyone should be 18 and idealistic, right? And
you
sort of
you might have been born too early because right now creativity is being rewarded everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, I think at the end of the day, like being a creative is like the key, right? You know what I mean? Like that's the thing.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
So then I was like, I need to figure out a job. Like this has to be like a real thing. So I worked at Pier 1 and I worked with an interior design student and I was like, I could do that. I could do that.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't like I was like, and do you remember Trading Spaces?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
So
remember.
good, right?
Yeah.
So like I was sort of enamored with the show and I was like looking for my career and like sort of feeling lost. And so I went to school for interior design. And then I graduated in 2009, which was sort of a rough moment for that industry.
That's when I got my master's. Yeah.
Oh, you went back and you were just like, no, I'm not entering the work world right now. I'm going back for my master's.
No, I graduated with my master's in 2009, and I went into going to New York City, and I quickly found out that not only I was in a competitive market, but the economy in general was challenging.
Yeah, it was a big crash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And I was like most people getting out of school sort of foolish and like excited and I had all these skills, you know what I mean? And I was like, here I am, world, you know. And then I only applied to like the top architecture firms because in school it was like only commercial design is worth your time, which I think when you think about the spheres of where we live, like our homes aren't important, but our work is important. And you can kind of break that down in a number of different ways. Like our homes do matter. Like work isn't
They
the
do
only
matter,
thing.
yeah.
I would say, I mean, we all heard the same thing, and
Yeah.
and we were entering the market at the same time you were, and even though that there was some truth to that, I didn't take that path. I got into residential.
I did not. I tried
Yeah.
really hard not
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
But I couldn't do it. I couldn't figure it out. So I
Yeah.
just floundered.
Yeah.
And I worked retail. I was like stubbornly like worked retail.
What was going through your head during that time period?
Everything was a mess. Like I left a long-term relationship and like my life was falling apart and I moved to Atlanta with my partner and we just kind of like floated around for a couple years.
So how'd you end up in Kentucky?
We moved to Atlanta, then we moved to Virginia Beach, and that was great. Like I lived in the beach for 3 years. Like I had no responsibilities.
That sounds awesome.
Why did I leave that? Why did I ever not stay there? I had a kid. So I had a kid. And then a friend of mine from college reached out and she's like, we're starting this online startup. It's going to be decorating with anyone, anywhere, all over the world. It was, so I joined that team and I was really excited and passionate about it. I had a kiddo and I was going to like work full time and like be a full-time stay-at-home mom. And then you just like that went really bad. But it took me several years of like hitting my head against the wall before realizing like you actually can't do that.
Okay, so let's fast forward to today. We are working on some exciting projects. I like the fact that we're doing things like site visits with the contractor. We did our electrical walkthrough before. Now not only are you picking out the fixtures and ordering the fixtures and working with that and coordinating that and the timeline with the contractor, we're also going on site before the electrical inspection and saying, oh, you know what would be thoughtful is placement of this outlet for these specific things. And we're doing crazy things like primary lighting, secondary lighting, tertiary lighting. And some of this is custom.
Yeah, and vintage, sometimes they're getting pieces and we're rewiring them. I mean, I think it's how much attention to detail do you need? What I used to try to do in the past was be as like hands-off as possible and as quick, because I felt like that was a kindness. It was like people don't really want to invest in this. See, like I'm taking up too much of their time, and I felt, you know, like how can I get you like a mood board? Like here it is, like you do it. And then I find that I started working with a construction company like in tandem, you know, on projects and staying really involved. And that's when you can really start to see the gaps. People don't know how to explain it, and it's not fair for a customer to like write a novel about how it looks. You know what I mean? And people try to do that. Or they're like, could I be there when the guy lays the tile and tell him what I want? And like, no, you cannot. Like that is so inefficient and unnecessary. And like everything has to be lined out and clearly communicated and signed off on for efficiency and for accuracy. So we don't have like change orders and doing things over. So what I used to feel like was a kindness and being sort of like minimal in a service scope was actually creating so many problems down the chain. It was a disservice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this usually happens in residential. When you have like two owners and they like to pick in and they like to give their inputs, even though in construction it's in the middle, and that's actually when things go sideways usually.
Exactly.
But I think it's challenging from a business owner standpoint because we have to have a very thoughtful conversation with the homeowner. We have to then say, hey, look, you know, before it was like an hourly situation and we're going to give you this to get that, to whet the appetite so that you can have a basic concept and a basic idea of what we're going to do. And then you run with it. But now we're like, if you choose to purchase these services, this is a package deal. This is your monthly, you know, price point.
Exactly.
That it's a flat rate fee for the month, but it includes all these things. So many meetings, with the client, with the architect, with the contractor, all these different interactions, so that we're making sure that everything goes smoothly.
Exactly. If you're going to invest hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars into your home, how happy do you want to be when it's done? Or how many things do you want to go back and change? Like, or unknowns. I think the other thing is about install realities. People don't understand how materials are going to meet, and so they feel like they can make decisions, but sometimes they make them without all of the information. And when you don't have all of the information, the install is not what people want.
No, the money we're saving our clients by charging them a premium and doing everything to their
clarity
the first time is paramount, because if they want to go back later and change something after the fact, inflation, different contractors, you name it, the fact that they're living in the house now and we have to work around that changes the scope, it changes the price point. It's much more expensive to do it later than it is to do it right the first time.
Just get it right the first time.
Yeah.
Like, get it right and understand what it is that you're doing, understand what it costs. The other thing that people don't understand is, like, for example, this is sort of a general way to talk about this idea, but a 12 by 24 inch tile is cheaper to install than a 2 by 2 tile. Mm-hmm. Or, I mean, that's the most, like a
it'd be a sheet.
Like a 4 by 4 or
exactly.
2 by 8 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So if you like make 2,000 square feet tile decision about 2 different materials, now your labor costs go up. And then you're like, but why? I already had this, because contractors are building out their bids based on what they think you're going to select.
Yeah.
And that will have to change based on all the materials for every material. It's not just, that's just one example, but it amplifies through, if you want wallpaper, if you're going to do wood treatment on the wall.
I think that's an important distinction to make to the client. Like, hey, that's why we want to talk to your contractor. We want to have that dialogue because it's potentially going to save you money.
Yeah, they probably don't realize as well. It's not like you're not just going to your contractor. He does everything, right? He also has a team of people that he's engaging as well. So there might be
sometimes.
There might be one person for wallpaper that he uses exclusively for wallpaper because he's amazing at it, and that's the person that he's going to use no matter what. And so,
Paul, I love how you chose wallpaper, because wallpaper is so in right now.
Yeah, she mentioned it, but it's like anything, tile. Right. Maybe there's flooring, right? He has a flooring guy, and that's all he does is just flooring.
Exactly.
And nothing else. So the contractor is engaging with everybody. And like you said, if it's something different, then okay, I got to go talk to that guy. And now it's going to be this price for that guy to do this, and et cetera.
It's all about coordination. So every material decision is a different labor cost.
Yeah.
So that's hands down. And then every decision has to have a quote associated with it. So you're pricing out all these different things. And then sometimes people are like, well, what about this versus this? So now you're collecting 2 quotes. Or, what if I lay my floor tile and a herringbone in the front versus just doing it like a more of a straight lay? What are those different costs?
And sometimes that process is multiple steps. Like, for example, when we go to our trim carpenter or our a furniture maker,
yes,
you're going to do a spec, like a proposed general idea of this is the vibe we're going for. These are the basic dimensions. And then he's like, okay, well, how can we actually build this?
Right.
And how can we make it better? So it's a collaboration now too.
Always.
So we're getting multiple viewpoints on how to make this piece as amazing as possible, and just make it like a viable thing so that it can be done at a cost of, like, maybe not a cost effective way, but at least it's realistic, right? And not unreal. Like, we're not wasting that time and money.
It's what they want. It's your client is always going to tell you what they want to spend, and so it's about helping them meet their expectations. Like, for example, the wood piece is a good example. Like, is it paint grade wood or is it oak? Is it rift sawn oak? You know what I mean? Like, so that within all of those different decisions, there's tiers of pricing built in, and people just you can't know all those things. Even if you read, great number of design blogs. I mean, you're going to get sort of misinformation, and you're going to get confused, and then you're going to be at the mercy.
When was the blog posted too? So it's like if it was posted a year ago, it'd be very different. That conversation versus a conversation today.
Exactly.
And I will say also what is the key of the good interior design is actually not only like putting nice colors together now, but understanding the properties of materials.
Exactly.
What materials can be suitable to place in one room, because sometimes you will say people, it was like I would like to have wood flooring in the kitchen. Can I have it? Yes, but what wood? How is going to be installed? How is going to be prepped? How is going to be installed? Another question for you I have is, do you doing any site visit or inspection of the work? Is it your ad services? Is it something that you put as a basis of design? Can you tell us more what is actually your typical basic services? What do you usually would like to do, like the ad services? Because now I'm listening your engagement in this project. It's almost like for me, it was like there is a lot of ad services that you probably like.
Yeah.
I mean, picking materials, orderings, like storing them, even put some additional wiring in it. That's all for me, for an architect who worries about like, geez, I want to have certain control. I don't want to be sued by some things, you know.
Totally, 100%.
Yeah.
It's a lot
So
of
how
it can
you
be
actually,
liability.
how you actually define what is your basic services, what is your additional services, and how you communicate that with the client through the contract to how.
Yeah, so I did get a nice contract put together last year. Happy with how that's been working. And I think I've been very lucky that nothing has gone south. But I think it's the nature of the industry. You know what I mean? Like things do go wrong, but it's always about coming up with a solution.
Well, Nino, and you might not know this, but on this particular project, a lot of that liability goes through ArcFluence. So
In this instance, correct. So I don't put a contract with this particular client. So like,
So you actually put in contract through the ArcFluence.
design services are through our company.
Okay. Yep.
Same with the landscape design.
I see what
everything.
you're
So
saying.
We are managing that process. Yeah.
But when you do some job, do you actually doing your own contract
Yes.
separately, and then you have to worry about all this?
Yep.
Okay.
You just have to, it's all about communication and being thorough. You know what I mean? Like making sure that you're doing the right thing in the right space. And again, luckily have not had any issues. I think it's just, again, if you are talking to the right people about the right things and asking the right questions and providing documentation, that's the key. And letting experts, like the people that do like the woodworkers, the mill workers, if they tell you that something needs to be done a certain way, listening to that information and making those adjustments.
Exactly.
So it's
So you already have a network of your woodworkers, and are they usually like a local? Are they usually like a local from the area, or?
Yes. Oh yeah. Like so yes, that's been an interesting sort of, like we were talking about millwork earlier. You know what I mean? Like it's sort of finding the right people who also not just being skilled at what they do, but also who are good communicators with you. You know what I
see
mean?
what you're saying. Yeah.
It's huge.
We spend a lot of time educating our clients and setting expectations, and I think that's like when we do design consultations, they're starting to now take the shape of, rather than me coming in, and we still certainly talk about the possibilities, but it's a lot of finding out the client's needs, strategy, and then educating on what is the best course of action. And we're taking a lot of our design consultation time to now have those conversations, which sets us up for success when we get started on the project.
So for this latest project, did you guys recommended the contractor, or contractor was selected by the client?
The contractor we have worked with in the past, and he brought us in on the project. So the
I see. So
contractor
contractor was the Broadway project,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And
we brought in
including
Tabi.
all trades, like including the millwork guys, or you have to maybe recommend the millwork guy.
This is an unusual project. The client has a tile installer, and I think he did his own HVAC subcontracting, if I remember correctly. So there's been a couple of things where the client has taken on, and so you have to just do more legwork to make sure that things are done properly.
Saying.
Yeah,
Got it.
and it's not. I like that kind of stuff. So.
In this particular case, it is going to be worth it. I'm super excited about how amazing this is going to turn out.
Yeah, and they're lovely people, and I think they're building something for their family and like the storytelling aspect is always, I think, the most interesting part. It's like, why are you doing this, and who is it for, and what is the narrative that you're talking about in your own head about your house, or you know what I mean? Like, how do you feel about the space that you're going to inhabit? And I think they're creating almost like a fairy tale environment. Like they're creating, and it's beautiful. It's going to be unreal.
Do you recall? Is it Frank Lloyd Wright? So one of my architectural heroes designed a house around another house, like around a small house. They built a superstructure around an actually existing house. I can't remember who it was though, because this was years ago.
A house within a house. That definitely was not Frank Lloyd Wright.
No, it doesn't sound like. Yeah.
But this is kind of the case here, where they have a really.
They had original like house that they were inspired by, and they kind of took a few hints from it, right, to kind of set them on their path.
Did Frank Gehry do that with like
maybe
when
it
he
was-
was like he's
Yes,
the
Frank
superstructure
Gehry.
over like
Yes.
the okay.
He had like an old childhood house or something, and then he ended up building a new house,
It's like plywood and like
he built a new house.
sculptural.
Yeah, and the original house
I
and the
cannot
footprint
recall that.
stayed. So in this particular case, like the cabin and the original foundation, everything, and they built onto this cabin, on and around and above it. And it's really unique.
It's like 3 times the house it was.
Yeah, and it was definitely the more expensive route, but there's an attachment to them. There's an emotional bond with that original cabin that they bought so many years ago. So it made it kind of special. So it's a really good story.
So talking from today to the future, where are you seeing yourself? What is your future goals? Where are you seeing the potential growth in a business or your personal growth?
I want to have a good time.
Okay.
It's like paramount. We're only on here for so long. Like, why not enjoy it? But like, really, truly, when I say I want to have a nice time, like like happiness is sort of the key.
Your guiding light.
I just,
So how are you achieving that? Can you sell us a little bit that secret recipe so we can all enjoy it? While actually working on our stuff. What is your secret thing?
That might be, yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna cost you. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. I think like autonomy.
Autonomy,
like
okay.
just setting your own schedule, picking the kind of things that you want to focus on, working with people that you want to work with, and then having the ability just to at some point say like, these aren't the right partnerships, or these aren't the right. I've spent some time I tried to work for somebody else before I jumped into my own thing.
Yeah.
And that didn't go great. You know what I mean? But I think autonomy is key. I want to build a team of creatives who just want to do fun, creative things.
I couldn't agree more. And I think the result of doing those things, you are now because of that happiness, you're now saying, oh, I like to do this. If 5 o'clock comes, I'm not looking at the clock. I'm working, and I'm enjoying. I'm getting this immense satisfaction out of the things that we're creating together. So, I think it makes you better at your craft.
Obsessives just want to obsess, right? Like I think, and if you can let us do that.
Well, it's about caring too, right? There's it's not just like a job to you. You're not. It's not a task that it's like, okay, I'm done, and you walk away from it. Great, no problem, right? You actually care about the product. You care about the space that you're organizing. You care about what the experience is in the space based on the materials that you put there. So, I mean, I get it, like that side of it for sure.
And creating realistic schedules. So you're probably like, okay, I have this client. I probably have to devote my majority of my time to this client, and then you have a second call like, hey, Tabi, can you help us with this?
It's challenging. I think
is.
I want to say, first of all, I want to say yes to everybody.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But the reality,
it's the curse. It's the curse of the design industry.
It is.
Yes to everything. Oh yeah, we can do that.
And then he start biting you back.
Yeah.
So I think mastering that. I mean, I like your approach. I like the autonomy that you have. I think that's a key, especially being brave enough to set up your LLC and starting from there. Another, being the mother of a kid and having the job is not easy either.
It's not easy.
So and there is a lot of balancing already that you're doing in your life. But having that first like enjoyment in design, I know sometimes I'm project manager now today with the big projects. But sometimes, like if I get an opportunity to design something, like I was designing this like a self-checking station in a hospital, and I was like, I'm gonna actually design that, and then you feel that pure enjoyment on it. Unfortunately, in my neck of the woods, it's probably like a 10% of the everyday's work. So I'm really envy your approach and location where you're now.
It's not been easy.
Yeah.
There's been lots of failure. I mean, like an enormous amount of failure. And it's been so informative. Problem solving. Like, I just love problem solving. So even just like the clients solving their space and communicating with them, but also like the unknowns. Like now this house has X, Y, and Z problem with it. And so the solution that we developed is not going to work. So now you have to solve that problem. And I don't find that to be like tedious or overwhelming. I'm always kind of like, usually I'm kind of like, oh, let's see what we can figure out. Like,
do you usually like work with like some kind of community or groups that are actually creating something? Like when you mentioned rugs, is there like something like a local makers of the rugs or something like that?
Oh, yeah. So in terms of I could talk a lot about rugs. In terms of what is being made locally, it would be artists doing tufting carpets.
Oh.
Do you know the tufting process?
No.
So
explain this. Yeah.
You take a like a cheesecloth Sort of, it probably isn't exactly, but that's what it looks like. And then you'd shoot usually wool or nylon fibers, and then you glue the backing on later. So like it's a very organic. Like if you're an artist and you want to create something in a different medium, you can design and draw whatever it is, and then do this thing, and you can either cut it or have it be looped. And there's other ways you can sort of produce it. So I think that would be locally. Most of the carpets that I would source otherwise are probably still being made overseas, even if they're machine made. But a lot of the rugs are hand knotted, and they would be made in Afghanistan, India.
Oh, really? Wow.
And sometimes, a lot of things from Turkey are coming out that are older, so like maybe not necessarily being produced there as frequently. But Afghanistan, I think, is still pretty active, and India definitely, Pakistan.
Wow.
So the rug making process is like so the other thing that I'm really focused on for future is sourcing and finding like high quality, interesting old things. Not necessarily always old, but I think that old things are inherently easy to love.
Oh, they have character, and they're definitely more unique than something you just go to Home Depot or Lowe's and buy off the shelf.
Yes, and I love West Elm. Can I talk about them?
Absolutely.
But I think that we're a little bit saturated in some of that. Like, I think you have to create an interesting collected space, you have to collect things. And so I think you can have staples from big box stores. I think it's the high-low, being smart with your budget and that sort of thing. But I like to see people finding things and having things that are more meaningful.
Yeah, and I think we're also seeing the market now where people are willing to pay for that.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And I still love to shop there. Like, that's not a negative. It's like it's about creating that balance. But if you only are buying things that are new, there's going to probably be something. It won't be as interesting or dynamic as it could be.
It might be lacking a soul or
100%.
Yeah. That's why my house.
Yeah.
So Sarah and I design personality. We call it grandma chic.
Yes.
So it has that old world, comfy, that soul, but then chic, modern, clean.
Yeah, put that modern layer to it.
Yeah.
I love it. No, I think that's the way to do it. I think if you can balance those things really well in a way that's meaningful and personal, you can create something that you're not going to get tired of it. I think that's the other thing. It's like we live in a consumerist culture. I'm not trying to knock that and on its own. Like, I think that we just have to be more conscious of what we're consuming and how we're consuming it.
So majority of selection of materials, light fixtures, even furniture doing online, or you already have some connections that you can explore. Like, for example, furniture wise, there are some local people that actually made their own, or that you would like to recommend?
There are several. I'm going to get their names wrong, but there's a brand on, and I'm going to not even remember where they are, but TJ, I won't even try. I should look it up later. Yeah, it doesn't matter. TY Furnishings. So there's a local, and then Edgework Creative is building furniture. Fabric Farms is doing upholstery. This sort of an interesting company because upholsterers, like mill workers, are sort of older, and often people are not taking on these trades, and they're sort of taking it on themselves to train up a younger group of people to do these things.
Yes, take on those trades. If you're listening to this, we need that.
Yeah, recently actually I visited the furniture factory in Wisconsin. And actually, this big furniture factory is actually almost employ the half of the city.
That's awesome.
And you have generation and generation actually working in this factory. And polstering is one of the processes that I actually went there, and I was just staring and look at them how they're putting this very skillfully together. And that's kind of really my passion. I was like, geez, I can stay here and stare at these people all day long.
Nina wants to take 2 years off and just really get into it.
Yeah, no, honestly, I like stuff when they're actually made by hands, honestly.
Same. We connect instantly to stuff that we can tell is made by hands.
Exactly.
We just do. It's like the human seeing another human thing that's been done.
Sarah and I really didn't get into art. I mean, we really couldn't afford to be honest, in our
You got to find vintage.
Years.
You got to find it. It takes, that's the hard,
But that layer that adds so much to a home, and that creative. I mean, we do have a lot of my grandmother's paintings in the house, which is great. I love it. But I think that creative needs to exist in every space because it's going to make you as an individual, especially if it's attached to you in some way.
Storytelling.
Yeah.
Like
It
it's your
is,
story.
yeah.
It'll make you more fulfilled, and everything, how you even show up in the world, I think it's going to make you better.
I usually say the good designers has to be good storyteller. Honestly, I'm almost like a positive about it. And sometimes we just like what I actually figure out that keep your sketches, keep your you
Process.
cannot believe your processes. Sometimes we just like if you sketch on a napkin or something, we just have tendency to draw away. It was like it was just take it for granted. You know what I'm saying? Keep all this stuff. Sometimes I ask like my interior designers was like, guys, I don't want to see your renderings that someone else put it. I want to see your sketches and I want to put it on a board.
Right.
I want to see the process. I want to see creation of
Take a step
idea.
back. How
Yeah.
about just sketch it out for a while?
Yeah, honestly,
Let's have some conceptual design and put a little bit of time
So do you
into
sketch? How was your? I haven't actually heard more about your
Process.
like your creative, how inspiration came from, like how you putting things together, what triggers it.
Yeah, I think the client is always the inspiration. So that's key, number one. Sketching, I would love to sketch more, but I don't. I mean, I really just start with the plan, like the layout in SketchUp, and I iterate, and I just I think even though I don't necessarily sketch a lot, I take a lot of time to play. And I think it's that play is the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like it doesn't have to be finished, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's about the ideaing that you're doing. I just happen to do it digitally a lot. So I'll iterate with floor plans, and then I'll iterate with like elevations. If I really get stuck, I might sketch out something just to kind of work through it very quickly. Like this isn't working, this isn't working.
I'm using something similar. It's like a Sharp 3D, which is an iPad, which is some kind of SketchUp for iPad, and I'm actually using that medium a lot.
Yes.
Just you play with the geometry, scales and stuff, and it just helps you that process.
Hugely. I have started sketching at night on like in my iPad. Just nothing important, nothing that matters. Just like, this is a llama. I mean, like literally nothing that matters. You know what I mean? But just to kind of have that disconnect, or to like continue that creative, whatever it is. You know what I mean? The more I can do creative things, that's really like what I want to do. Jerry Seinfeld, who's not my favorite comedian, which is irrelevant, but he said that he wanted to be like a woodchuck. You know, the woodchuck just wants to chuck the wood. He wants to do the comedy. I just want to do the creative, whatever it is. You know what I mean? I just want to do that as much as I can until I die.
I love that.
So you actually, are you in a networking with other interior designers? Do you guys have any gig going together? Or like how you actually keeping yourself in a professional world, like learning new trends, informations and stuff?
I think like being in Kentucky and then moving to Columbus and having so as a mom doing an online, I had an e-commerce selling rugs, and I've done that for 8 years. So I still have it, but it was like very big. In my main focus several years ago, I was so isolated. Like I was just at home. I was on Instagram, and it was like my only adult communication besides like, you know, go to the grocery store or whatever. When I came to Columbus, I was very much like, hi, how are you? You're doing something. Let's talk. And that's one of the reasons we connected. You know what I mean? It's like I met several small business owners, and then they connected me to different builders. And it was just very much about being curious and not being shy about saying hi, you know.
Is Neocom your thing? Do you go on those?
I'm going to High Point this fall.
Oh,
so
cool.
I've gone to High Point a couple times. I think High Point's cool. It's exhausting. I was going to go to Neocon this summer, but I missed it. It was like with summer camps and like scheduling. It wasn't a good time. So it's definitely on my radar to go soon, so that you can see the new stuff, so that you can be immersed inside like what other people are doing. It's so important. It's just about creating the time to do it. And I also want, like, one of the bigger goals would be to do some traveling and sourcing, and like just going to places that are interesting, like I don't know.
Like Milan?
Like everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to go to Japan in college. I'm not super well traveled, but I want to go back. And I bought some pottery when I was there, and I was like, you know, South America, I think, is also another great.
It is.
There's so many places to be able to go and like find the story of people and like connect those dots. I think that's what it's about.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Wow, cool.
Well, Tabi, thank you so much for joining us today. If there's one piece of advice you could give out to someone who's engaging an interior designer or an architect, what would you tell that client to make sure that they ask or cover?
Wait. So I'm talking to a client,
Yeah.
not a young professional.
So someone who's out there, what questions should they be asking their interior designer?
If you're just getting ready to hire them.
Yeah.
I would want to talk to the referrals. Like, who are your clients? I want to talk to past clients and hear what they have to say about working with you. And then I would also want to know, like, more of what their process is like, and what are the physical deliverables. If they don't have like a good list of physical deliverables, like I use Google Sheets. You know what I mean? Like, here's exactly what we're buying. Here's exactly what it costs. Here's where all your quotes live on a Google Drive. You have to. Like, if someone isn't answering or engaging you, if they just want to show you mood boards, just know that should only cost a certain amount of money, and you're going to have to do a lot of legwork. And if that's totally fine with you, that's great. You're going to have to learn a lot along the way. And maybe you don't want to do that. I don't know. Maybe you don't want to do that.
Yeah, it's like the design consultation level for us, right? So like that's the mood board. But then if you want like the full blown drawing set, then fine, we're going to get into all the nitty gritty detail, and let's do it. But obviously a lot more time and effort on our part.
How high sustainability is on your agenda?
I think it's huge. I mean, it has to be, right? I think that when I started getting into rugs, it was a reaction to being in a rug showroom with a lot of really with a second generation rug dealer who was very passionate about the history of all these carpets, but also sold polypropylene machine made rugs that would last about 3 to 5 years. And it was really depressing. And I felt like, I didn't understand why he did it. You know what I mean? He had a business to run, and it wasn't like he was going to stop the tide of these products. Like they exist. But when I started my company selling rugs, they were only selling wool. Because wool's the best fiber. It just is.
I love our rugs from you.
And
we even do like pillows and stuff. Like it's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're usually made from like older products that were remade into pillows or whatever. But if you're not thinking about these things, you're missing what's happening right now.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a great stopping point. Tabby, thanks so much for joining us. This is a really fun conversation.
Jeez, I think I can talk to you for hours. Honestly, it was really inspiring.
He likes talking about design in general.
Yeah.
It's fun, right?
Nino is our creative for sure. So you guys will hit it off. We're going to be working on more projects. Nino, we're going to bring you in on the interior design side if you want.
Yeah. Right. No, I'm going to be an architect, and I'll let Tabi rule the world. I have no problem with that.
You'll do the spatial layout, and she'll do the
problem
finishes.
Is like I'm really nosing but it takes a time my interior designers, for example, why are you sketching when we gonna design? Because I'm project manager, it was like in my world everybody who wants design is design, because now we're challenging ourselves. We're challenging this design because every design, how simple it looks like at the beginning, it's actually can be very complicated thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and if you show the passion and love for it, it's gonna transcend to client much easier and quicker. And he's gonna grab it as a sponge. He's gonna soak in. If it is something thoughtfully put together, he's gonna appreciate. Like you're buying your car and you're gonna see do you guys think about this? They think about that. They think about this. You know what I'm saying?
Intentionality always comes through. It always does. We can see it when you
transcends so quickly to the client if you really put effort and love into it. No, you cannot.
Yeah, so if you just phone it in, it shows
like
right
that.
through.
Yeah, like that carpet that you mentioned. You just recognize from the get-go is just
soulless and basically a piece of plastic that's
going
to go and sit into a landfill very quickly. It's a waste of your money. Sorry, I'm so sorry. Don't buy all the buy whatever you want. I don't mean that.
That's exactly how it is.
You get what you pay for as an expression for a reason.
And in today's world, when people just trying to make money overnight and just looking for shortcuts, and we
have to be more conscious of what we're doing.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think we'll be surprised on how much joy it actually brings us.
Exactly.
It does bring the joy.
It is instant. It is long term, but it can also be instant. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for having me out. I very much appreciate it.
You got it.
Awesome.
So fun.
Well, we'll be back in 2 weeks for another episode. Until then, take care of yourself.
All right.
That was so good, Tabi.
Oh my gosh, yay.
You survived. You see, time flies so quickly.
That was great.
This has been the ArcFluence podcast. As always, you can get more information and additional content on arcfluence.com. Please subscribe on the platform of your choice and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you.